just finished watching the video on chapter 8 talking about organizing and organizational structure. Isn't this a lot cleaner? My gosh, I just felt so good erasing the board and everything and not putting a whole lot of stuff up. Well, we've done chapter 7, we've done chapter 8, and now we're moving into chapter 9 in Business 101, Introduction to Business, online with Professor Joe Lane. Chapter 9, as I think I've already mentioned to you, has to do with productions, or maybe I didn't, productions and operations management. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Joe Lane said in chapter 8 that this was the shortest chapter in the book. I did. So I'm expecting it shorter. I promise it's going to be under an hour. It's going to be way under an hour. I'm going to keep my word. We'll see. Let's get started into chapter 9 and see if I kept my word or not. One of the great things about being with you is, as businessmen and businesswomen and economists, you know so much stuff now that when we talk about something, we don't have to explain it. Okay. I went back and put the definition of business up here. Remember video number 1? Businesses produce goods and services for what? Goods and services for what? Profit. That's exactly right. But in this particular chapter, we want to talk about goods and services. The production of goods and services. Productions and operations management. You know, there are people in a business that are responsible for production. That are responsible for, you know, if we talked about Ford, there are folks that are specifically responsible for getting that Ford off the, you know, specifically getting that pair of shoes made. I mean, they are involved, they manage in the area of production. They're not in accounting, they're not in IT, they're not in marketing, they're not in promotion, they're not in transportation. They are managers in the area of production. Okay. That being the case, let's look at our handout. From 2001 to 2008, manufacturing output. And normally when you think of manufacturing, you really think of goods. Manufacturing goods. Rose 4% per year. The U.S. was the world's leading manufacturer. We manufactured about 25% of the world's goods. 2008 came the recession. Now there were a number of things that were happening. More and more outsourcing, more and more production of goods and services, primarily goods, were being done by other nations, you know, because we were outsourcing it to other nations. We've talked about that. Also, other nations were becoming much more technologically savvy. Plus, they were picking up on our techniques. They were using the same type of production processes that we used. A lot of the countries were probably buying those from us, or stealing them. No, they were buying them from us. Then we had the recession of 2008. That's the worst recession since the Great Depression. Now, we're in this pandemic right now. I don't know what this pandemic is going to do. I'll finish up this chapter speaking about that. But let me go ahead and just do the chapter as it's been presented to us. After the recession of 2008, there just weren't as many manufacturing jobs that returned. We lost manufacturing for the reasons that I've mentioned, and all those jobs didn't come back. So what's happened is, over the last 15, 20, 25 years, we have moved from a goods-based economy to a services-based economy. Our economy is more built on the production of services than it is the production of goods. Does that make sense? Look at these startling statistics. You know what the GDP is. The gross domestic product is the total value of goods and services produced, let's say, within a year. 70% of the GDP now is related to services. 7 out of every 10 is a service type production, a service to customers as opposed to a good. 85% of U.S. jobs now are in the service industry. Wow. And when you graduate from Delta Community College, and if you decide then to go into the workforce, you are much more likely to go into the service industry or a service industry than you are into a goods industry. Now, do we still manufacture a lot of goods? Sure. Are we still one of the world's largest manufacturers of goods? Yes. But Mr. Economy, the economy of the United States, we are now a service-based economy, a service-driven economy. All right, there's got to be a little name change here. In the past, when we were producing mostly more goods than anything, if you were involved in producing goods, they said you were in production management. If you told me, I said, hey Fred, what's your job over at such and such, graphic packaging? I'm in production management. That tells me that you're managing in the area where they're producing rolls of paper or whatever it is that they're producing. All right, but since now we're producing more services than we are goods, the terminology has changed. It's now called operations management. So if you told me that you're in operations management, and you're pretty astute with this now as well, since we've been doing all this learning, what that tells me is that you are in some area of operation. You're producing goods or services. See, production management, you thought more about goods, but operations management, you think more about services. Now, operations management, as our author defines it, a specialized area in management that converts or transforms resources into goods and services. So it's still the same definition, but it emphasizes services more. Here's the way I would read that definition. A specialized area in management that converts or transforms resources into goods and services. Because operations management does much more. So, we are a service economy now. We're more a service-based, 70% of our GDP, 85% of our new jobs. So as a result of that, we're changing some terminology of things. The old term of production management that was talked about primarily when you were producing goods has now given way to operations management, which more gives the thought to, yes, there are goods, but services as being the primary thing that's being produced by companies within our economy. With this pandemic, I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know what it's going to do with our goods production or our services production. A lot of our service industries, airlines, cruise lines, a lot of our service industry, and you think about Louisiana, what's the largest income, what's the largest revenue that Louisiana gets from travel and tourism? People coming to our state. How's that going to be affected? I don't know. I think there's going to be some especially in a lot of the service industries, there's going to be a pretty detrimental short-term effect. And hopefully but that's going to be part of our economy that's going to come back slower. Because the truth is, would I want to get on a cruise liner right now? I really wouldn't. A year from now when I want to? Probably not. It's going to take a while before I might do that, if I would at all. See what I'm saying? Okay. So right now we're not sure. Ladies and gentlemen, chapter 9. All right! Did I lie to you or did I tell you the truth? Here's what I found. Our author, let me tell you why it's so short. Our author in chapter 9 started off by saying, hey, we have moved from a manufacturing goods-based economy to a service-based economy. And he's right, and he backed it up, and he gave us the numbers. And he did that in about the first 3 or 4 pages of the chapter. Then the whole rest of the chapter, all the rest of the chapter that I am flipping through right now, you know what the whole rest of the chapter was talking about? Production management. And I said, wait a minute. You just said that 85% of graduates and all are going to be in the service industry, and yet you spend all the rest of those pages talking about production management stuff that most of us folks are never going to see anyway. So you may write it, but I ain't going to teach it. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said again, it's been fun being with you in Chapter 9. We have completed Chapter 9. I want you to be familiar with the fact that we have moved from a service industry, moved from a goods producing industries to a service industry, backed up by 70% of our GDP and 85% of our jobs are now in the service area. And I want you to be familiar with what operations management is all about. That operations management talks about not only goods but services. Done. I will see you in Chapter 10. A loud clap of the hands. I may be getting some applause from out there. This is pretty good, huh? Now look, it's not all of them going to be this short. But hey, it was time for a shorter one. Y'all have been pushing pretty hard. Loud clap saying we have finished Chapter 9. I'll see you in Chapter 10.